Good morning. Hare Krishna. How's everybody? What is your name, Prabhu? Michael? Micah. With an H on the end. Very nice to have you here, Micah. I think many of you have been here before, so you know who I am, but I'll tell you, for those of you who are looking in, and by the way, I'm looking at you right now, who are looking in from a distance. My name is Rupa Nugadas. I'm a very fortunate disciple of His Holiness Tamal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and grand disciple of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. We're going to be talking a little bit about a number of things. A verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and then some story information from the Mahabharata. So I welcome you to stay as long as you can. And if you need to get up and go, please do so, because I know you might have work or kids to look after or something like that. That goes for you who are listening in from the outside also and watching us on Roku or some other means. We will offer our respects to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a little singing, shall we? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Nitai Gaura Premananda, Hari Hari Vo. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribhajaka Charja Astu Tarasata Sri Srimad. His Divine Loving Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jayom Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribhajaka Charja Astu Tarasata Sri Srimad. His Divine Loving Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON Guru Parampara Ki. Sri Rup Sri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Sri Jiva Gopal Bhatta Das Raghunath Sad Goswami Prabhu Ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem Seko Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Ki. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki. Sri Vrindavadam Ki. Sri Mathuradam Ki. Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Sri Radha Kalachandidam Ki. Ganga Devi Ki. Jamuna Mai Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki. Briyabhadanga Transcendental Book and Prasadam Distribution Ki. Nitai Gaura Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namare. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravade Pacharine Nevishesha Shunyavadi Pasakta Deshitarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Yasan Tato Jayam Udirayat Nasta Praishwa Badnareshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Today, we're going to be looking first of all at Bhagavad Gita text number, chapter 2 text number 47. So if you have your iPhones with you, if you have this pulled up, you may chant after me, please. Karmanyevadikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phalla hetum bhur ma karma phalla hetur bhur mate sangos dvakarmani karmanyevadikaraste ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phalla hetur bhur mate sango stvakarmani. Word for word translations: karmani, in prescribed duties. Eva, certainly. Adhikara, right. Te, of you. Ma, never. Palesu, in the fruits. Kadachana, at any time. Ma, never. Karma phala, in the result of the work. Hetu, cause. Bhu, become. Ma, never. Te, of you. Sangha, attachment. Astu, there should be. Akarmani, in not doing prescribed duties. Translation by His Divine Loving Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. There are three considerations here: prescribed duties, capricious work, and inaction. Prescribed duties are activities enjoined in terms of one's acquired modes of material nature. Capricious work means actions without the sanction of authority, and inaction means not performing one's prescribed duties. Who is he talking to here? Arjuna. And who is this? Who is the speaker? Lord Sri Krishna. Yes. And what's the setting? In particular, give me a more precise location. Okay, I'm thinking in the middle of the armies of the Battle of Kurukshetra. This is before the fireworks started. The Lord advised that Arjuna not be inactive, but that he perform his prescribed duty without being attached to the result. That's difficult, isn't it? One who is attached to the result of his work is also the cause of the action. Thus, he is the enjoyer or sufferer of the result of such actions. Let's read on, Srila Prabhupada's purports. As far as prescribed duties are concerned, they can be fitted into three subdivisions, namely routine work, emergency work, and desired activities. Routine work performed as an obligation in terms of the scriptural injunctions without desire for results is action in the mode of goodness. Work with results becomes the cause of bondage. Therefore, such work is not auspicious. Everyone has his proprietary right in regard to prescribed duties, but one should act without attachment to the result. Such disinterested means unbiased, not uninterested. Such disinterested obligatory duties doubtlessly lead one to the path of liberation. Arjuna was therefore advised by the Lord to fight as a matter of duty, without attachment to the result. His non-participation in the battle is another side of attachment. Such attachment never leads one to the path of salvation. Any attachment, positive or negative, is the cause for bondage. Inaction is sinful. Therefore, fighting as a matter of duty was the only auspicious path of salvation for Arjuna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshul Meditam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Madhavishtam Sabitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mayadarati Swavarantikam Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravade Pacharine Nivishesha Shunyavade Pustatare Shatarine Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswaminiti Namane. So we got a text from Bhagavad Gita telling us about how we're supposed to act in this material world and how we should not be attached to the fruits of our action. It's been said that in the game of tennis, the person who has the racket in his hand is hitting the ball, has control over the ball until it leaves his racket. And then there is no telling where that ball is going to eventually wind up. Of course, a very expert tennis player will be able to exercise his skill in causing the ball to fall exactly where he wants it. In a similar way, we perform our activities, but we have no way of knowing for sure what the results are going to be. So therefore, sometimes we're very delighted and sometimes we're very distressed. So there were a number of incidents leading to the misfortunes of the Pandavas. In the beginning, Pandu, a great king, had two wives, Madri and Kunti. And at some point in time, after he had performed his kingly duties for some time, he took his wives and his children. There were two for Madri, as we know, and there were three for Kunti. And with his 5 sons, he took his wives and went to the foothills of the Himalayas, we understand. Or maybe it was in the Himalayas that he went, and where he wanted to live more or less indefinitely. And so there were many saintly persons living in the area, and they were a really nice example for the young Pandava boys, and they were also good companionship for their father. And so Pandu left the kingdom in charge of his elder brother, Dhritarashtra, who could not be an emperor in his own right because he was blind. And as we find out in the story of the Mahabharata, he was blind not only physically, but he was also blind spiritually. So the Pandavas, the boys, lost their father early on because of a curse of a Brahmana. And because of his death, his wife Madri also convinced Kunti, Queen Kunti, that it should be she, Madri, who followed her husband into death, because she was indirectly the cause of his departure, his untimely demise. And so they lost their father, and they also lost one of their two mothers. And eventually, on the advice of the elders, Kunti took her sons and went back to the capital city of, what was it called at that time? Hastinapur, the place, the city of the elephants. And of course, the king who was in charge there, Dhritarashtra, the blind king, had also had 100 sons by his wife. And what was his wife's name? Gandhari, considered to be one of the most chaste and one of the most beautiful women on the planet. She who covered her eyes when she found out that her husband Abi was blind from birth. She covered her eyes and, as far as I know, removed the blindfold only once. And that was right before the Battle of Kurukshetra was to take place. She raised her blindfold and looked upon the body of her son Duryodhana to transfer all of her reactions, her saintly reactions to her son, who had made a mistake and had asked Krishna before he went in to see his mother, is it appropriate for me to go in wearing no clothes as she requested me to? And Krishna, Lord Krishna, told him, well, just put something around your your waist to, so that you're not exposing your vital organs. And so he did so, and then Gandhari was very much disturbed that he had not followed her example, or her teaching, her instruction to him, to come in fully unclothed, because she was going to benedict him to make his body impenetrable by any weapon. In other words, it was to make him so that he could not be killed in the battle that was to come. But we know then that by Krishna's good advice, he did not have that benediction in full. We know later that because of the friction between Dhritarashtra's sons and the Pandavas, that Dhritarashtra was advised by elders in his household that he should divide the kingdom between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, the 100 sons. And so he considered that, and he did divide them. And when Lord Krishna rode out to the place that had been given to the Pandavas, he said, "So this is what your beneficent uncle has given you." It was a complete wasteland. But we know that by Indra's request, King Indra, the chief of the demigods and in charge of the rainfall, came and showered the land and made it verdant with growing, and made it beautiful. And then Krishna called for the architect of the demigods, I believe, and had him design and construct suitable palaces and meeting places for the Pandavas. And so they were reigning there quite comfortably with all those who chose to follow and be under the reign of the godly King Yudhishthira. But Duryodhana was an envious person. Duryodhana was the firstborn son of Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra wanted him to become the emperor of the world, which is the direction he was headed before the Pandavas lost their father and came back to the city of Hastinapur. And so Duryodhana then convinced his father to try to get rid of the Pandavas. They had already made an attempt to get rid of the Pandavas by sending them to the house of lac, a very flammable substance, to try to burn them to death along with their mother Kunti. But we know that by the help of Vidura, that there was a worker who constructed a tunnel all the way from the inside of the house all the way to the bank of a river that was close by. And by going through that tunnel and escaping to the other side of the river, the Pandavas were saved from being killed, even though most people thought that they had been killed. And Duryodhana, of course, and his brothers were very pleased with the results, that they had found the bodies of 5 young men and a woman, and they thought that that was the Pandavas and their mother. But it was not. It turned out to be someone else. So the Pandavas then, they stayed in hiding for some time. And during that time, they went to the Swayamvara ceremony of Draupadi, as you remember. And they were in disguise, of course. They were disguised as Brahmins. But they were told about this while they were hiding in the woods. I think, who was it? Can't remember the name of the person who came to tell them about the Swayamvara ceremony. But anyhow, they were encouraged to go and see, because they heard wonderful things about Draupadi. Heard that she was a very, very, very beautiful, most beautiful woman on the planet, young woman. And so there were others, her brother Rukmi, I believe, was it Rukmi, who wanted her to be married to Shishupal. Was it Rukmi? No, that was Rukmini. I'm thinking about another pastime, right? When Krishna's in Dwarka. Anyhow, someone wanted Draupadi to marry. Was it Shishupal at that time? No, I'm still thinking about another pastime, the Dwarka pastimes. Anyhow, so Arjuna went, and he was in competition, of course, with many other kings and princes from around the world who had come to win the hand of Draupadi. And so Arjuna was the only one successful in hitting a target that was very difficult. So then they came back and eventually made themselves known again to the world, and it was to the delight of many citizens of Hastinapur that King Yudhisthira and his brothers and their wife now had survived the burning house of lac that had taken the life of someone else. So there were still Duryodhana was very envious, even though their kingdom, which was huge, it encompassed all the known world at that time. Even though it had been divided up between Yudhisthira and Duryodhana, still Duryodhana was envious that they should have a kingdom that was even nicer than his own. And so he challenged Yudhisthira to a gambling match, 2 gambling matches. During the first one, Yudhisthira lost everything. He had to wager, and he knew this was going to happen because of the person whom Duryodhana had brought to do his gambling or his tossing of the dice for him. And what was that, Shakuni? And I think, if I remember right, he was the brother of Gandhari, wasn't he? So anyhow, he won that match, and so not only did Yudhisthira lose all of the jewels in his kingdom, he lost the kingdom itself, and then he had to wager his brothers, and he lost each one of them one at a time, and he even wagered himself and lost his own self in the gambling match. And then, after he had lost himself, then he put up Draupadi another one of the gambling objects. And of course, she was dragged into the assembly and was being forced to be stripped naked. But due to the intervention of any of the kings there, including her own husbands, the stripping of Draupadi's body went on until she raised her hands and called for whom? Hey Govinda, hey Gopal. And at that moment then, Krishna came unseen to anyone else and provided a length of sari that eventually wound up in piles and piles on the floor. And so Dhritarashtra, I think, finally came to his senses a little bit, and so he gave everything back to the Pandavas, much to the dismay of his elder son Duryodhana. And that was the first gambling match. And then at some time later, because everything was going so well in the kingdom of Yudhishthira, Duryodhana was even more envious. And so he said, Father, let us invite them to come back for another gambling match. And this time, the wager is that whoever loses goes to into exile for 13 years into the forest. And of course, we know that Yudhishthira lost again. And so he and his brothers were going into the forest, but Draupadi insisted on going with them. So all of them went into the forest, and they had many encounters that are all mentioned in the Mahabharata. One encounter that they had was particularly interesting to me in light of the verse that we've read today from Bhagavad Gita, and that is at one point that was about a year before the end of their exile. And by the way, during that last year, they had to be totally incognito, because if they were found out by any of Duryodhana's spies, they would have to go into exile for another 13 years. So how are they going to do that? So right before the 13th year was to begin, they were very thirsty out in the wilderness, and so Yudhishthira asked one of the younger boys, I think it was Nakula, to climb a tree and see if he could spot any water anywhere around. So he did so and saw that there was a place not so far away, and they could not only could he see trees that would normally grow around water, but he also heard water birds. And so Yudhishthira sent him over to bring some water back to all of them. So he went, but when he was there, he encountered a disembodied voice that told him, you may not take any water until you have answered my questions. This lake belongs to me. And so, because he was extremely thirsty, he ignored the warning. Speaking of water. He ignored the warning, and he fell dead. Immediately when he drank water, he fell dead. Then when he had not come back after a time, Yudhishthira began sending one of his other brothers out to find out what was wrong, why he hadn't come back already. And each one in turn drank the water without trying to answer the questions. And they died right there. They died. There was no pulse. There was no breath. They died on the edge of the lake. So Yudhishthira himself then went. And when he heard the voice saying, you must answer my questions before you take any water from this lake, Yudhishthira began answering the questions. And there were several that it took a lot of wisdom to answer the question. But I remember one of the questions especially was that, what is the most wonderful thing? And Yudhishthira answered, what? Very good. So I'll repeat that for everybody. The answer came, that was, for Yudhisthira's answer was, every day all around us people are dying. But everyone thinks that I shall never die. And so at the end of the questioning, the person revealed himself to be whom? Yamaraj. And he said, yes, I am your father. And he said, I am also present in part in Vidura. So we understand that Vidura was another form of Yamaraj. Yamaraj had been cursed, and there's a story behind that too. So because Yudhisthira answered all the questions, and Yamaraj revealed who he was, he said, now please take a boon. So he gave his request. It had to do with, may I always follow the principles of morality, and something. That's a paraphrase. And then the man said, Yamaraj said to him, my son, you have always been like this anyhow. So you already have what you have asked for. Now take another boon. So eventually he asked him to, all right, now you may choose one of your brothers that you would like for me to bring back to life. And so he chose, I think it was Nakula. It's either Nakula or Sahadev, but I think it was Nakula. And so Yamaraj says, you're a king, and you have to have armies and such because you're going to be in a battle. He says, why have you chosen him instead of one of the greater fighters among your brothers, such as Bhimasen or Arjuna? Why didn't you choose one of them? And he said that if I left all of them, if I left Nakula and Sahadev to die and chose one of my other brothers, that would leave Madri, who had already given up her body, as having no son. She would have no son. And if I allow my own brothers to die, then at least I remain as a son of Kunti. So Yamaraj was very pleased with his response. So he is known so well for doing his duty and performing all kinds of pious religious acts. So this is in keeping with the verse that we read. Krishna says, you may perform your duty, Arjuna, but you should not feel yourself entitled to the results. So some might have said, as Yudhisthira was concerned about, that he is the cause of the death of so many men, 640 million men, in the battle of Kurukshetra. And it was all because of my, Yudhisthira is saying, all because of my desire to have a kingdom and to have wealth and to have opulence. Of course, Krishna had to try to talk him out of it. Eventually, it would have to be Bhishma Dev who helped him to understand then that he was not essentially responsible for the death of all of these people, that he was doing what Krishna had advised Arjuna to do, and that was to perform his duty and not to take any of the results as his own. So we find that pure devotees of the Lord have always been tried. The ones that are present in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that are present in the Mahabharata, such as Queen Kunti, for example. She went through the trial of losing her husband and her co-wife, and yet she carried on and performed her duty of raising her sons as she should. And so this is a person that um, took on the responsibilities that she was given, and yet she realized, and she said to Krishna that you're the one who is responsible for all these things to happening. You're the one who is responsible for giving us protection at all times. And so please continue to give us difficulties and trials, because when we do, we feel you coming closer and closer. So in other words, she was willing to accept whatever the reactions were for her, for her sons. So Kunti, she tolerated the unfair treatment of her sons, and still went on as the queen, and did not verbally to other people put the blame onto her nephews, which is kind of amazing, you know. She could have, at any time, she could have said, Dhritarashtra, you're responsible for all the difficulties that have been brought on my sons and myself. We have lived, and Kunti was with them when they went to the forest the first time after the burning of the house of Black. Kunti was with them. And so she saw how her sons had been treated. They tried to poison Bhima because he was so very, very powerful. They felt that if they could get rid of him, that was one of the principal obstacles to their having the entire kingdom for themselves. This is Duryodhana's thinking. So Queen Draupadi had to tolerate being neglected while she was being stripped naked, neglected by her, not only her husbands, her 5 husbands, but who were the most powerful men in the world. But they are also by persons like Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya and so many other persons who were there in the assembly, and even Dhritarashtra, we can bring him in too. He had the power to stop all of this that was going on, but he chose not to because he was so desirous of his own sons becoming rulers of the entire world. So, bringing it up to date a little bit, Srila Prabhupada did not have an easy time in this life. We accept him as a pure devotee of the Lord. And yet, Krishna did not make everything easy for Srila Prabhupada. Even in his married life, even when his business went completely bankrupt, and his wife was not interested in sharing his desire to have a Krishna conscious household. So he faced one disappointment after another, to the point that he was left living by himself in Radha Damodar temple. Is that correct? It was Radha Damodar? And if you've been there, you've seen the little place that you wonder how could anybody. It's like a room that was maybe 10 feet by 10 feet in dimension. No running water, no air conditioning, no fans, and it gets hot there in the summertime. So Prabhupada went on. He performed his duty, and he kept always in mind the desire of his and the expressed desire of his spiritual master Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to go and preach to those people in the English-speaking world. And so he did so. And for the first year, it was just one problem after another, even to the point that he was threatened. His own life was threatened by a young man who was on drugs, and he was sharing an apartment with because he had nowhere else to stay. So, but eventually, some young men began to come to be with Prabhupada, and we know that from there, Prabhupada gained the manpower that he needed. And he said, my spiritual master has sent all of you young men to be with me and to help me spread this movement all over the world. So even before all this happened, even before he started having disciples come to him, sitting on the park bench and talking with the old gentleman that came up and sat with him, he began to describe his kingdom, which was temples all over the world and followers by the thousands. And so none of this had manifested yet, but Prabhupada had strong faith that it would happen. So we have problems in our lives. We came to this temple community expecting life to be simple and easy, and it was not for many of us. And for just about everybody I know who has come to this community, there has been some kind of problems that you've had to face, either with your own mind, or with your husband or wife, your spouse, or with other devotees who were here in this community who were no more advanced in spiritual life than you were. And sometimes we had problems. Sometimes with the administration of the temple, we had problems. But some of us continued to try to do our duties as Krishna recommended to Arjuna. We tried to do some things to help Srila Prabhupada, help our own spiritual masters to spread Krishna consciousness throughout this world. And so even though we came from unfortunate backgrounds, some of us did, some of us had very difficult childhoods, but even though with all of that and years of living with other people who had no spiritual desire at all, and always set some kind of a really lousy example for us, still, that's the kind of life we had to live with. And now we've been taught that we should not look back on all those people who had negative influences on us and put the blame on them. Because nothing happens to us, whether it's good or bad, except that we deserve it. And Krishna has let us know that we have to tolerate whatever little suffering that we have to go through now as devotees with spiritual masters, even though we're going to get sick, even though we're going to get old, even though our children are not going to turn out exactly as we hope they would, still we have to continue doing our duty. Because what does he say? You're not entitled to the fruits of actions. So we have to, and Prabhupada said also, never consider yourselves the cause of the results of your activities. Prabhupada said, that's a translation. Actually, it was Krishna saying that to Arjuna. You should not be, you consider yourself to be the cause, and you should never be attached to not doing your duty. So here we are, 2025. Some of us, we're here 20, 30 years longer than we thought we'd ever be on the planet. And yet, somehow or other, Krishna has given us such a nice environment to live in, right here in the middle of a hellish city. Some could say, well, it's not as hellish as New York. It's not as hellish as Los Angeles. We do have trees here. We're not in the desert. So Krishna has permitted us to stay here and perform our activities to the best of our ability. Try to follow the instructions of our spiritual master. Try to follow the instructions of our temple authorities and set a proper example, not only for our own families, but for the families of other people around us. So all we have to really do to feel better about our situation is simply look back in the Srimad Bhagavatam, look back in the Mahabharata, and we find examples of persons who were so far more advanced spiritually than we are, that we're just like a speck of grain, a grain of sand or something. And yet somehow or other we've still been permitted to stay in the association of devotees. Is that amazing? Maybe not for you all who are listening in, but for this person who is speaking, it is very amazing that Lord Krishna, Radha Kalajanji, Patita Pavan, Shri Radha Kalajanji, that they're so gracious that they, in spite of our inadequacies and our lack of preparedness and the kind of background that we came from that keeps haunting us in our minds, still, even with all of that, Krishna has said, okay, all right, Rupanuga, you're determined to stay here. I've tried to kick you out. You didn't stay. You came back. And now here you are at the what Prabhupada would say, the fag end of your life. And you're still hanging in there somehow or other. So yes, by the mercy of the devotees, somehow Krishna has allowed us to stay in the community. And we're very thankful for that. So once again, the translation to today's text. You have a right to perform your prescribed duty, Arjuna, but you are not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. Hare Krishna. I would ask for questions, but I don't have anyone sitting beside me right now to relay your questions. So I'm going to ask you, please let me stop now. And we offer our respectful obeisances to all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, who are just like desire trees, who fulfill the desires of everyone, and who are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha ananta koti vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Kalachandi Dham ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premananda. Hari Hari Bo. Everybody have a good day today. And if you have a chance, please chant. Please take the chance to chant. Hare Krishna.
कृष्ण कीर्तन गान नर्तन प्रभु प्रेमामृताम बनिधि धीर धीर जन प्रिय प्रिय करो पूजित श्री चैतन्य कृपा भरौ भुवि भुव भारा तारक वंदे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्री जीव गोपालक वंदे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्री जीव गोपालक कृष्ण कीर्तन गान कीर्तन गान नर्तन परम प्रेम में कामनी वीर वीर जन प्रिय प्रिय करो निर्मा पूजितम चैतन्य कृपा भरौ श्री चैतन्य कृपा भरौ भुवि भुव मारव अंतरक वंदे रूप सनातन रघुजुगौ श्री जीव गोपालक विचारणै पुनः सद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणं त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण करो विचारणैकन पुनः सद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरण धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणं श्री चैतन्य कृपा बरौ लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणं करौ। विचारणैकनुगुणं तद्धर्म संस्थापक लोकानां हितकारिणां त्रिभुवने मन्नं शरणं Radha Krishna Radha Krishna Padarabindau Madanamitau Radha Krishna Padarabindau Madana Nandena Mattalika Vande Rupa Sanatanam Raghujugal Siji Krishna Kitana Dana Natala Parau Prema Manidhi Veera Veera Janapriya Nirma Udita Sri Chaitanya Kripa Bharau Mara Mahanta Rakau Bande Rupa Chanatana Yakujiga Vasuda Sadasure Sudarajalakim Dharnisha Ajavadasa Jadadada Ranna Mandalasani Sada Tuchava Bhutva भूत्वादीन गणेशकौ करुणया वासुदेव मंडलपति शनि सदा उत्सव भूत्वा दीन गणेशको करुणया कौपीन कंठास्थितौ